Hello everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Story to Screen podcast, the movie podcast where we review all different kinds of movies every week. I am your host, Chris. Josh is no longer with me today, unfortunately. Who's that?
It's me. I got a harmonica for Christmas.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Pretty good. Yourself?
I'm doing good, I was just joking, by the way.
No, I am still here.
Sorry, everybody, that we've been absent for a little while. Well, it was the holidays, and I was busy with my studies and all that stuff. But we actually had a great time with with our Hobbit review series that we did.
I didn't.
You weren't there with us. You were well, you haven't even seen the first one, have you?
I've seen most of it.
Okay, well, that doesn't count, so you gotta...
No, it doesn't.
But anyway, well, I'm happy to announce, in honor of the new year of 2014, the Story to Screen podcast to review the Alex Kendrick's films from Sherwood Pictures, Flywheel, Facing the Giants, Fireproof, and Courageous. And nothing has been officially announced, but they are currently, at the moment, working on their brand new film, which is...
Number 5.
That's a blessing, for them, and I hope they have a lot of success with that. I actually turned in a job application to see if I could work with them during the summer, so we'll see how that turns out. Actually, shooting's about to begin in March, so they'll probably announce it sometime between now and mid-February, I guess. Today we'll be reviewing Flywheel from 2003, directed, written, produced, and starring Alex Kendrick and a lot of volunteer actors from from Sherwood Community Church in Albany, Georgia. I'm really excited about this retrospective because these are influential films on the Christian filmmaking community, and I think it's just an honor to finally delve into these movies and to, especially in the direction that I've been wanting to go with this podcast for a while, kind of bringing a little more of a Christian perspective on films. So let's just go ahead and just dive into our review.
Well, a good rapper came after all. Jay, how's car business today?
Hey, who's this guy?
He's a minister, isn't he? Yeah, I'll probably give him a deal.
$20 says he doesn't.
Reverend, he bought a good car. Jay, I thank you so much. You've treated me so well today. Well, I'd like to pray and ask God to bless you in your business.
I'd appreciate that.
And Lord, I ask that you treat Jay just like he treated me today in this deal.
Why are you interrogating me? I'm a used car salesman. I sell cars.
At dishonest prices.
That's enough.
You're in the shape you're in today because of the choices you've made.
Oh, so when Jay Austen pulls in a few $1,000s, it's good business. But when Bernie Myers does it, it's ripping people off?
You grossly manipulated her.
You taught me how!
Now, Flywheel is the first film that was produced back in 2003. It was shot on a very low budget of, I think, $20,000, which that money went towards, camera equipment and...
Renting the lot.
Yeah. Well, did they rent the lot?
I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Okay. I actually think it was... A lot of the sets and all that stuff were donated, especially... Or, so... Which that in itself is a blessing. Because everyone, I think, involved... Even the people who worked at the car dealership, I think, were members of the church. So
makes sense.
So that's kind of nice to actually hear that these people who believed in this vision that the Kendrick brothers brought forth were really inspired by this. Now, I will say that on a video quality level, it's kind of cheap. It's in their early days. They're trying to work with what they have, so I can't really criticize them for that. But I gotta say, on a performance level and a script level, I think this is actually pretty good. For starters, they actually did a pretty good job. Not the greatest performances in the world, but I think everyone was very good. Even Kendricks himself. I've always bought him as an actor. I mean, I don't know if he's had any acting experience prior to this, but I've always bought him as, crooked car dealer, a football coach, and a police officer as well. I mean, what do you think of him?
Alex Kendrick's a pretty darn good actor. He just I feel like he has the most emotional investment of anyone in these films usually, and it definitely shines through in his acting. He's able to channel it, and that's one of the big things. I feel like any director could very well be the character in the movie because they already have that passion. It's just a matter of can they channel it, and he channels it very, very well.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's going through these hard times with his relationship with his family, his co-workers, with himself and his relationship with God, and he pulls it off very well. And when he makes that, when he comes to the salvation, I bought it. I mean, he delivers on those scenes so well, and I would love to interview him, just ask him, did you ever go to acting school, or what kind of acting experience did you have? I bet you $10 he's gonna probably say I had none prior to this, but it just all came together so well. And
it's possible, or some local theater or something, whatever the case may be. I think experience isn't always the case. It's one of those things. Acting is that you either have or don't have the ability to channel, and then you either have or don't have the emotion behind it. The ability to channel is something that can be taught, but it's something that you're really actually pulling out of someone. It's showing them how to do something that they didn't know that they could do if you're teaching it. And some people just know it. So just on an instinct level. Acting isn't something like, working at a grocery store or something where you don't know the policies and things and you actually have to go in and, acting is like, here, you're going to be this character, you're going to play pretend. We all play pretend as a kid. Mm-hmm. Some better than others, and things like that. And it's just using the emotional investment and channeling it the right way. And so once you have those two pieces, which, like I said, one can be taught, one cannot, but even the one that can be taught can be just known via instinct too. It's just a matter of going in and doing, and if you're good, you're good.
Yeah, definitely. The thing that I noticed in the bonus features was how much devotion how much he dedicates these projects to the Lord. Every day, the Kendricks brothers stated that even before they would even shoot a single scene, they would pray about everything. Like, they would ask God, God, how do you want me to write it? Do you want us to write it this way? Do you want us to write it that way? How do you want us to do these things? How do you want us to shoot these things? How do you want us to do this? How do you want us to do that? Who do you want us to get for each of these roles? They, in a way, while Alex Kendrick may be the director behind these movies, his name may be on the director's card when it shows up. He really gives that passion and dedication to God, and God, in a way, is really guiding him while he is making these movies. And
definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and you feel it.
That's something I definitely see in this. It is an artist-God relationship, which is something that isn't talked about very much. I guarantee you, there were nights that C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien, as writers, that's a different kind of artist, but still,
yeah.
Even though he writes some, but that connection between an artist and God is a really, really interesting one, because you're drawing all of your inspiration, whether you're a Christian or not. All inspiration is drawn from God and His creation. And, people, they may not realize that, they may not acknowledge it if they're not a Christian, but, a Christian has a deeper connection to his inspiration, his source of inspiration. He's right there at the beginning of the stream, the spring. He's right there at the spring. And, basically my point being, if you're connected with God as an artist, then yeah, your inspiration is going to flow and come a lot easier usually. unless God is teaching you to be patient through it.
Yeah, I mean that's very inspirational. I mean, I can't think of anybody that I know of. I'm sure there's people out there that I just can't think of anybody at the top of my head, as opposed to someone who would pray over everything, every little detail. I mean, even when they're shooting, they even sit down and pray to God. God, how do you want us to do these things? How do you want us to shoot this scene? It's that devotion to God that is so inspirational to me. And I think it should be inspirational for. I think it has been very inspirational for other young Christian filmmakers out there. I mean, I don't know if they get down on their hands and knees and pray, "Oh God, how do you want us to shoot this?" If they're that submissive. But yeah, that's just very inspirational.
Definitely. I think as far as the praying for all those different things, you should absolutely pray for those different things. And I generally try, when I'm writing, those who don't know, I'm writing a novel currently, a fictional novel, and I definitely try and pray before I sit down and write, especially. The thing is with that, sometimes God answers it immediately and you just get this outpouring of inspiration, and it feels like you can't stop. It feels like a faucet just turned on and you can't turn it off because it's stuck, Mm-hmm. And then there are other times where it's stuck the opposite way when it's off and you feel like you can't get it on, and that's when he's trying to teach you patience. Mm-hmm. But art comes when art comes. God really decides when art's going to pour forth. And some days you're going to have those bad days when it just will not come.
Yeah.
And that's where artist anxiety comes from, and that's where trusting in the Lord has to start.
One of the things that makes this movie very unique is the comedy. I think the comedy in this movie is very, very fresh. It's very, very original.
My one complaint about the comedy is the amount of fat jokes between the two, Vince and Bernie. It's just the amount. It's not that the actual jokes are bad or anything like that, but they do kind of hit you over the head with it for
the treadmill, the biscuits.
Yeah. It's like I said, none of the jokes are actually bad. It's just that they kind of beat a dead horse with it a little bit. Yeah. But as far as I think some of the really, really good comedy comes from the conversations between Jay and his wife. There's even in some of their arguments, there's some really good comedy where one or the other gets kind of dumbfounded because they're going in one direction so much that they kind of lose sight of the entire argument. I will say Bernie's reactions to stuff were very, very funny.
He's another actor that is actually really good. I'm actually kind of sad that he never came back for the more recent two, Fireproof and Courageous. He wasn't Facing the Giants, but he wasn't in the last two.
Maximus!
Bernie.
Max the Marvelous! The Magnificent!
Maxaroni! You get it? Maxaroni.
How stupid. What?
Well, let's just say what the movie's about. The movie's about a guy named Jay Austen. He owns a used car lot, and his business is failing. His relationship with his family is very, very, very weak. He's manipulated so many people, and things are basically going backwards in his life, and he can't get things under control. And he even says in the movie that he hates himself for so many things that are going on. Now, I bet you're wondering what the title Flywheel comes from. Well, the flywheel, one of several mechanisms, but it's a very important one in the car that helps to start it. And without it, you won't be going anywhere without it. What do you think? What do you think the flywheel represents in the film?
Honestly, the more I watch it, the more it's kind of like the metaphor. I get it. I think it's more along the lines of if he's not right with God, everything else won't work. And yes, that's true, but I kind of question the metaphor in that To me, God is more than just the flywheel, which kind of seems like the way they're going, but not quite. It's a little fuzzy, but God is the whole car and the oxygen that causes the ignition and the road, and he's absolutely everything in that regard. But the flywheel, I think it's just a matter of I think that's kind of where they were going, but I kind of take it as it's the flywheel metaphor is when your life isn't right, when things are broken, you're not going to go anywhere.
I actually kind of think that the car, which in an interesting way is a Triumph 2R3, I think it's from the 1950s, I think, that particular one.
Something like that is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's really cool. That the car is the representation of Jay Austen. He may appear successful, he may appear to be having a good marriage, he may appear to be going to church or having a good relationship with the Lord and all that stuff, but in reality, he's not. He's wrecked inside. There's a piece missing, and that's kind of and the flywheel, at least in my interpretation, the flywheel in a way kind of represents his heart not being submitted to the Lord, and because of that, everything inside is just all over the place. Everything's just not working. So yeah, it's kind of similar to what you just said, but it's kind of you kind of gave your interpretation of that, and I kind of had my interpretation.
Well, I'll go ahead and bring up one of my issues with the Kendrick Brothers films, and what this film actually, rewatching it, has kind of changed my opinion slightly. When I say problem, it's not a major problem. I'm not like, oh, these people are doing it completely wrong. No, basically, I feel like a lot of the Kendrick Brothers movies have been the story of Job over and over and over. And in many cases, that's true. But when I rewatch this, he actually did bring up a Bible story in it that I went, okay, yeah, this is more like that than it is like Job. And they are similar in that they're both a trusting in God to fix things situation. But when you really dive down into it, this is a man who possibly never had it fully together. He's had, sketchy past. He's done all kinds of things that are wrong, and this is time to put up or shut up and finally fix these things and move on. While as Job, it was a man who, basically had his heart in the right place. It's just that he was going through trials, and then God helped him get through those trials. And I think some of the other films are more Job-like in the Kendrick Brothers line, but Flywheel is definitely more, and he mentions it in the movie, Zacchaeus.
Yes.
And this is very much a Zacchaeus story, and so that changed my opinion as to them all being one note. I can't blanketly say that anymore. This is, even though it's similar, it is slightly different. So I will say a rewatch of this endeared me to this film a whole lot more than the first time I saw it.
Okay. Usually with Christian films, there is commonly the protagonist in the first act, you see his lifestyle, it's not good. In the second act, it's him facing consequences, or finally him submitting himself to God or something like that. And in the third act, you see him kind of seeing his relationship with the Lord, improve in all areas of his life, and depending on the story, he may have to face other obstacles. But this one is in a way kind of unique.
It ebbs and flows in an interesting way. Definitely.
It has some, specifically with the third act.
Yes.
Because I think the third act, and we'll get into this later, but the third act, I think, is the best third act in all the Kendricks movies. I'm going to say it right now. I think everything flows in and ties in extremly well.
I really like the way it flows as well, too. It seems very much real life, and not, fantasy land. It's it's very, very real in that all these different things. If A happened, if God put someone in this situation and they were really changed, they would react this way. it was very, the cause and effect worked really well, and it continued on. That was the interesting thing, because it wasn't just if A happens, B happens. It was if A happens, B happens, then if B happens, C happens, and it kind of went on and built upon itself.
You just mentioned the book or the story of Zacchaeus. That's chronicled in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. J. Austen's arc very much so mirrors the Zacchaeus story that which is only just 10 verses in the Bible. You really don't get much of a look into Zacchaeus' life that much. You don't really know if he's a married man or if he's single or what's going on, but he does allude to the possibility that he has swindled people and all that stuff. Let me read it. And Zacchaeus said, and Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. You are definitely left with the impression that Zacchaeus has swindled people in the past. And
one of the reasons, let me just say real quick, one of the reasons I think that they leave that open in the Bible is because if you look at history during that point and the Roman tax collectors, etc., they were generally considered very swindly, I guess you'd say, like a used car salesman or like a lawyer. They were considered some of the dishonest people of society. That was kind of a stereotype already when Luke was written.
The odd thing was that when I was watching the bonus features, the Kendrick brothers never really acknowledged the Zacchaeus story. They basically were I'm sure they looked at the story, but how much they were inspired by it, I don't know. We could probably assume that it did have a major influence, but to what degree we don't know. The idea was more based upon the idea of a used car salesman selling, a broken down car to a pastor. That's how the movie kind of sprung forth. In terms of the scriptures, they didn't really say specifically where. I'm sure they got into that later on, but
I think that's honestly not a bad way to go about looking at a story, making a story too. If you're writing a story that has true and biblical morals, it's going to have parallels anyway, so it's not really necessarily something that you have to do consciously. It can be more of a subconscious influence from your Bible reading and your quiet time.
Prior to his conversion was when he confronts the Bernie character, one of the coworkers, swindles one of the customers, and then Bernie basically acknowledges to him, you told me how. He is beginning to see the consequences of his actions and how much of an effect that it's having on the business that he built with his own two hands.
Yeah, he's seeing the how stripped the flywheel actually is after pulling out the transmission.
Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
Or if you got a house that's got a lot of mold, you're pulling back the walls and stuff like that, and you realize how deep this problem goes and how long this thing has actually been going on.
Apparently, it's been going on for 2 years. They do give an indication that the movie, or that he's been in charge of that company for at least 2 years.
It does, but I think it also kind of alludes to the fact that he didn't have things in order before those 2 years.
Well, yeah. Well, they do hint that his relationship with his dad is not on very good grounds. They do hint at that, and they don't really explore that anymore. And he does indicate that he has a brother as well. So, and the other brother obviously was more loyal to the father.
And there we have another parallel with the prodigal son.
Yeah.
A little bit, not 100%, but a little bit.
It's not beat by beat. I mean, he's not yearning for his father's wealth or anything like that. Well, he does. He is asking for his support, even though he doesn't deserve it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a black sheep story in general. And I think that was a good element to weave into this. I think the father's relationship was needed a little bit, but I don't think there was much of a connection between that and the actual story arc.
No.
Yeah, that was something that seemed a little bit more almost of a side plot and kind of didn't go much of anywhere. And that's one criticism I will say of the narrative. There are a couple of loose ends that either could have been left out or could have been tied together with the main plot a little bit better. That's one of them.
That's true. They could have actually tied the father into the third act, maybe. He could have actually been the one to come to the car lot.
Yeah. But yeah, it could have gotten to the point where he needed someone else, and his dad called just to see what's up, and he's like, Dad, I know you're really far away, but are you busy? That kind of a thing. That could have been something pretty interesting, So
again, I think it was tying for using the prodigal son. My son was dead and now he's alive again, type of situation, And the movie, it doesn't. Here's another thing too. The movie doesn't make specifically clear if he himself was a believer. He just didn't accept God, or he did believe in God.
He was a believer on the to me, it was he was a believer on the outside and not so much on the inside. He was kind of playing around with his at some point, obviously, because he's in church, he's tithing, etc. He's playing around with the fact that he's, maybe made these vows and confessions and whatever, but he's not really fully serious about it.
Okay. Ultimately leads to his salvation, and this is where the movie gets really, really intelligent in terms of how they're bringing the spiritual elements and how God is beginning to work through Jay Austen and how it's affecting everything else in his life. So in a way, I wrote down here Psalm 37 verses 4 through 7, but I'm going to read this one. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So after he submits, the lot to the Lord works in a very mysterious way.
I think one of the things that Jay is also learning and his wife is that things aren't always a straight line with God. He actually has some building tension and climaxes just like in a story. And they don't always see, the climax that's just around the bend.
Okay.
To be fair, it is a fairly complicated third act. In a good way.
The third act it connects in so well. Things work this way, things work that way. It's kind of complicated, but if you watch it several times, you can kind of, you can begin to understand it. But it works out pretty well. I mean...
you have to take it one step at a time. Let me try, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, yeah.
To essentially summarize the third act. One of a person is hired on as somewhat of an intern almost. It turns out that this guy was an undercover investigator checking out different car lots across the U.S. and was going to see if any of them were honest. Well, the only one that they found that was honest was Jay's company. And so people come and they say, yes, I want to buy from an honest man. I want to support this man. That in turn takes care of the problem of Jay's debt with the car lot. That takes care of that whole arc, and they make some money on top of that. But when they look at the money, and then they look at the people that he'd swindled through the years, they pretty much allude to the fact that it is 100% accurate. They don't actually come out and say it, but they do say the word 100%. That could mean, that there's a couple bucks left over or something still, but, but basically, they decide that it's so close and it's such a coincidence that it can't be a coincidence. And so they go and try to give the money back to everybody. Jay is very much initially very happy because everyone else is like, you're giving me free money? But then there's a few, one in particular, a very sassy black lady, that kind of demoralizes him a little bit and makes him eat that humble pie. And he kind of, I think he's brought back down to realize it is what it actually is. Following that, there's another reporter that comes and talks to him and somewhat does a little bit of guerrilla journalism. Says
that's an interesting word, guerrilla.
Yes, well, it is. she goes in and she starts to sling mud, saying that this guy Bernie, who you fired, says that you taught him every dirty trick in the book, and that you used to be really, really dirty. So why should we believe you now? And he answers by saying, I don't have any particular reason, because I definitely did all of those things. Following that, all the people that he gave the money to come and say, no, 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 including the sassy black lady. There's another side of the story, honey. And so they report that, and after that...
that's kind of it. I mean,
that is mostly it right there. All these things come together. He still has his lot. He's trying to be a better dad to his son. He's trying to be a better employer. All these different things, and we just see that things are starting to work in his life the way they're supposed to. And symbolically, too, they get the Triumph car working, and he and his son go on a drive.
Yes. It's presented right there that the man has obviously triumphed in many spiritual ways. He has triumphed in being honest. He has triumphed in being successful at his business. He has triumphed at being a good father and a husband. And I think that's, let me say, I think that is something that the filmmakers thought about when they got this car, but I think it was totally a God thing that they actually got this car. And I hate using the term God thing because it's like, there's this Christian slang, and I get so tired of it and stuff. Let's say what words that mean words instead of, phrases that just mean, what I mean? So, but essentially, I do think it was God's providence that it was this kind of car. That was God throwing the icing on the cake right there for this movie.
You what? You cheated me.
Well, I mean, I just wasn't very honest about it.
So you think you can waltz right in with a $1,200 check and expect me to accept what you've done?
Well, I'm sorry for what I did.
You better be sorry. The last thing we need is a dishonest person taking advantage of old ladies.
Ma'am.
Don't you interrupt me. You better give me an apology.
Well, that's why.
Don't you talk back to me. I'm tired of the lies, the deceit, the confessions, and everything else. Amen.
So, on our closing thoughts here, what do you take away from this movie that has impacted you both as a person and in terms of your relationship with God? How has the film impacted you in those ways?
Laying on the heavy questions.
Yeah. I'm going to answer that question too.
I'm sure you are. I'm just saying. Essentially, I think one of the big things is in the story and in the way that it speaks to people. I think this film, unlike a lot of more Job-based films, gives a little bit more to the depravity of man, and how it really shows and convicts how depraved we are and how sinful we are. And I think in that regard, it speaks a little bit better because it's more convicting compared to some of the other Kendrick Brothers movies and other Christian movies. It's very, very much, it doesn't hold back as far as this guy's life is falling to pieces. Mm-hmm. And it's because of his sin. It's very obvious it's because of his sin. It's not because he's going through some kind of trials or stuff. I mean, he is, but it's not just for testing purposes. Mm-hmm. This is like a full-on man falling at a very fast speed with no safety net. And in that regard, I feel that the way the film speaks to me is, I'm trying to see how I can say this. These movies are encouraging to me in that I see someone trusting in God and God responding. I think that's something that needs to be shown. I think that's something that isn't shown a lot in other realms of the movie sphere. And encouragement is the biggest thing coming out of these movies, and I think that's the biggest thing that they want to do with this is they want to encourage Christians, but also show non-Christians that in a story narrative, this is what happens if you do what God wants you to do.
I love this movie. I think this is probably the strongest recommending movie that we've reviewed. I highly recommend it. I think it's a great family movie. But in terms of how it's impacted me, both as a person and spiritually, I mean, this is a movie that makes me want to be a stronger Christian in the Lord, and I want to be a man. I want to be the spiritual leader of my own household. I mean, is it easier said than done? Absolutely it is. But again, nothing in life is easy, so...
But we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us too.
Yes, definitely. That's one of the major things that I take away from this movie. It really inspires me to have a better relationship with my future wife, and to have a very close bond with my family, and and even with my relationship with God. I'll admit at times that I've kind of God is not really at the center of my life, and he kind of goes to the side at times, and that's a huge fault on my part. But I need to I want to get back to that, and I have gone back on of restoring my relationship with God. And not that anything bad has happened, but it's just it's that desire to get things straight, so that way I can honor God with all the things that I do. But yeah, this movie is so good. I liked how you put it one time. You told me that you felt like this was a movie that their style, the Kendrick brothers' style, is very much like
Adventures in Odyssey, the small town. People who've been, even though it says that he definitely moved here from somewhere else, Atlanta or whatever. This is very much a small town feel, and small town folks doing small town things, and that's something you don't see a lot very much anymore.
Yeah, and I think this is his not just this movie, but even all four of his films have gone into that very well, and I love it for those reasons, and I love this movie to death. I love it a lot. So strong recommend, and I look forward to delving into the next three in the next couple of weeks.
What's wrong with me is that I have been living for myself. I have not been the husband I need to be. I have not been the father I need to be. I've not been the spiritual leader I need to be. Today I ask God to forgive me. I have gotten myself in a mess in almost every area of my life, and I can't fix it. I admit that I have not been worthy of honor or respect or the love of my family. But I want to be.
Jay.
Judy, I'm asking you to pray for me. I need you. I need you terribly. I am resolving to let Jesus be Lord of my life every day.
So that will do it for this episode of the Story to Screen podcast. Next week, we'll be reviewing Facing the Giants. The following week, I think it will be Fireproof. And then I think we might actually have a break in between where we might actually go review the new Lego movie, which I think will be out in the first week of February, if things work out properly. So
sounds fun to me. That trailer just blows my mind.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to it as well. And that'll be a lot of fun. And I think Trey is volunteering for that episode too. So maybe all three of us will...
That'd be wicked.
That'd be awesome.
Definitely.
2014 is shaping up to be a good movie year, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to just spending some more time with these, with the Kendrick brothers and what their future films will bring. So that will do it for tonight. I am your host, Chris.
And I am Joshua.
Have a good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Ow.
Thank you.